Major developments in the massive Pentagon intelligence leak case. Prosecutors revealing overnight they are going to ask the judge later today to deny bail to alleged leaker Jack Teixeira at that hearing. And they're citing new evidence, a lot of new evidence, as to why they say he is a national security and a public safety threat if they let him out on bail, including these photos of guns and ammo at his home that they discovered, online indications he wanted to carry out a mass shooting. And joining me now, NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Dilanian and former National Security Advisor Ben Rhodes. Welcome to both of you. So, Ken, it's very explicit in this document that the prosecutors filed. Repeated, online searches about Uvalde, Monterey Park, recent and former shootings, past history of shootings, as well as that he smashed his devices, his computer, and put him in the trash heap.
It really does change, I think, the way we look at this case and this defendant. And first of all, they say, as you rightly pointed out, that he has more classified information than we have seen in public, and that is very alarming to them. And they're concerned that if he's released, that he is recruitable by a foreign adversary who would have every incentive to spirit him out of the country. Now, presumably the FBI wouldn't let that happen, but that's a real risk. That's why they're arguing to keep him
And they say
in jail.
that he could have a foreign power help him get out.
Exactly.
It sounds as though they're talking about Russia.
Sure, absolutely. And then they also present a lot of new evidence about his state of mind. And as you said, he seems to fit the profile almost of someone who could have carried out a mass shooting. He was searching on classified databases for information about Uvalde and the Buffalo Supermarket massacre and the Las Vegas massacre. He had guns in his house, many guns. He had posts that were so concerning that the local police initially denied him a gun permit. And yet somehow he got a top secret clearance after that. And as you said, they say he destroyed evidence. They found remnants of devices smashed in a dumpster. You're looking at his bedroom there, which was replete with camouflage and netting and full of weapons. So a really disturbing picture. Now, the defense is pushing back on this, and they actually say, I was surprised by this, that the probation department recommended that he be released. So we'll see in about 20 minutes from now exactly what happens.
Wow. And as well, the Pentagon, Ben Rhodes, has suspended, temporarily at least, 2 of the commanders of that intelligence wing because they're raising serious questions. Congress is certainly, both parties, about the screening and how they handle things and why they weren't tracking all these downloaded documents.
Andrea, this is astonishing to me. I mean, it's gobsmacking to me that this kid had a security clearance. I accept the premise that there are a lot of people in the U.S. government that have a need to know classified information. It never would have struck me that a 21-year-old who has said such crazy things in public that he's denied a gun permit, which is a hard thing to get denied in this country, is just handed access to classified information like this. There's a rigorous process, and they'll scrutinize your background, and they want to know if you've ever tried marijuana. But apparently, this kid could get this kind of access because, despite having views that he's posting online that are deeply troubling. I think it raises huge questions about what kind of due diligence is done down the chain of command inside of the military, inside of intelligence agencies about security clearances. Because there's a ton of scrutiny of political appointees coming in and getting security clearances. But this person was accessing the same stuff that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the United States military was accessing. So I think that's a real issue that Congress should be focused on. The leadership of the military and the intelligence community needs to be focused on, because this individual clearly should not have had access to this kind of information.
Now, one of the leaked documents, according to the Washington Post, also, Ben, reports that American spy services detected construction at a suspected Chinese military facility in the United Arab Emirates, one of our allies in the Persian Gulf, a year after that very wealthy oil and natural gas-rich country announced that it was halting the project. What's going on there?
I think one of the themes that comes out from all these leaks, Andrea, is clearly there's a building concern inside the U.S. intelligence community about which side the Emiratis are on in this larger conflict between the West and the world's democracies and the world's autocracies, particularly Russia and China. We've seen previous reporting in these leaks around Emirati overtures from the Russians to cooperate more closely with with them in service of their aims. And now we see this really concerning evidence potentially of a Chinese military installation. What we've seen in the past is the People's Liberation Army, the Chinese military, using infrastructure like ports to start to build out a kind of military footprint that can also have an intelligence purpose in a place where the United States has been essentially the security guarantor for the royal family there. And for the government there. So I think what we're seeing in all these leaks is a concern that the Emiratis are breaking in the other direction when it comes to getting closer to China and Russia. Obviously, they want to play both sides and maintain the U.S. relationship, too. But this is kind of putting publicly, I think, what a lot of us have known privately for years, which is there is a kind of push and pull when it comes to the Gulf countries, and the Emiratis are right in the middle of that.
And in another major development now, President Xi is sending an envoy, a very high-ranking former ambassador to Moscow for many years, to Ukraine after this first phone call with President Zelensky. And this is someone who was given the Medal of the Russian Federation by Vladimir Putin personally. He spent years in Moscow, decades ago, even during the Cold War, is fluent in Russian. So he is very, very close to both Putin and Xi. Is that putting the finger on the scale with possibility of talks, or is it a potential breakthrough down the road? Is this someone that Zelensky might feel he could negotiate with because he has access to Putin?
I think you have to explore every channel. I think it's important to have multiple channels in a conflict like this because you never know where you might make traction. But the reality is, coming after Xi Jinping's visit to Moscow, which essentially embraced Vladimir Putin on the anniversary of the war, the Chinese quote-unquote peace plan that they put out, very friendly to Russia. And the danger of these kinds of missions is it's part of a kind of global propaganda push that Putin might want, which is, look, we're open to peace. We're open to Chinese-mediated peace. The audience for that is really in the rest of the world. It's not in the U.S., in the West. It's in the global South. So, yes, you want to explore it. Yes, you have to keep lines of communication open. But the reality is this could also be an effort by Xi to support Putin's propaganda, to essentially pivot at some point to saying, oh, I'm ready for negotiations. I'm ready for Chinese brokered negotiations, which most likely, almost definitely, will not insist that the Russians leave occupied areas of Ukraine.
Yeah, and also placate Europe at a time when the Chinese have offended Europe by their ambassador in Paris. Ken Dilanian, Ben Rhodes, thanks to both of you.